This video is basically about me trying to learn some tools. My name is PJ Metz. I'm from Project Discovery, and this is...
Hey, I'm Brendan O'Leary, also with Project Discovery.
Yeah, so the whole point of this is, well, Brendan is my manager and he's head of community and I'm the developer community manager. And we work most closely with our community on Discord, on GitHub, in real life. And a lot of what we're doing is trying to make sure that people know how to use our tools. And the real irony in that is that I don't know how to use all of our tools because I'm brand new to security and I'm really brand new to tech in general. But this video is something that came from Brendan, actually. And this idea of me learning these tools was just going to be us hanging out. And then today he said, what if we record it? What if we make it available to other people? And of course, as people who want other people to learn these tools and to understand how our tools work with each other, how they help hackers and bug bounty hunters, that was an excellent idea. So I dressed up a little bit. I cleaned up my background a tiny bit, not enough, but that's the whole point of this series. And Brendan, why don't you tell us about this idea that came to you last night? You don't have to explain it all, but sort of an overview would be great.
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit. So yeah, for those that may not know Project Discovery or those that have maybe touched a few things like maybe Nuclei or Subfinder or a couple of them, we actually have we have 20 open source tools that we publish. And so that's like this huge kind of collection of different things. And like PJ's not alone in saying he doesn't know how to use all of them. Like there's very few folks that know how to use all of them. But they all have like a very specific use case when you're looking at either, again, bug bounty hunting, penetration testing, or just running an offensive security program within an enterprise. And so I kind of wanted to just like walk through at a high level, first of all, what is an offensive security program? Like, why is it important? What are the things that a company is looking to protect and the things a bug bounty hunter might be looking to attack? And then why does that matter? And then how do all these different, 20 different Project Discovery tools fit into it? So I thought maybe the best way to do that would be to visualize it. So first, let's talk about like, what is it that we're looking to protect, right? Let's say I'm a company, right? And so I've got my company, I don't know, do a background here. I've got my company network and infrastructure, right? So that's like, let's say that's this box.
All right. So these are all the things that's like the network that the company runs on.
This is everything.
The assets. This is okay.
Yeah. It's just like anything technology at, company A.
Company right? A. It's my favorite company.
Now, some portion of that stuff is internet facing or internet touching, right? So then in addition to the company, right, in our little world, there's also the internet, right?
Yeah.
And there's an overlap, right? There's some portion of that overlaps where the company has got things that are on the internet, right? And so what kind of things does the company have, right? What does this like Venn diagram look like? Well, their company might have an app. Let's say they have an app, right? And they might have an API, right?
Yeah.
For accessing data about the company. And
a website.
They're going to have a website, right? Yeah, so it's a website. But a large enough company, right, is going to have like even more than this. They're going to also have all kinds of other stuff, right? So they're going to have maybe some like, I'm going to call them microsites. There's all kinds of stuff that this could be, right? Like they've got like some contest that they ran or promotion that they ran and they spun up, Christmas or Hanukkah.company.com, right? For some, or some event, right? Like,
some random different like asset that they created for a specific purpose that is still out there, even though it's not necessarily being used anymore.
Or maybe worse, not out there, not still running in, but still have the next but we'll get to that. Right. And then WordPress. There's going to be so much WordPress. Like once a company is big enough, WordPress is a significant chunk of the internet. And so once you're big enough, you're just going to have so much WordPress. All right. So then there's going to be other stuff, right? So there's going to be stuff inside the company. And like one of those things we could think about is like databases, right? Like our friend the database. Now that's going to have, I'm intentionally making this a little sloppy because that might have some overlap, right? The app is going to need access to the database, right? The API is going to need access to the database. Probably like the servers and stuff for that database, live inside the company in theory or ideally aren't exposed to the whole internet, but who knows? So then also inside the company we'll have like unexposed or theoretically unexposed, servers.
Hopefully.
All right. Yeah. Like, so, server, it's only one, right? So we have a server and maybe we've got a couple of those because, we've got all kinds of stuff happening. And this could be other cloud assets, right? It could be like serverless servers, right? Which are really just servers, but, you know, that, no, whatever. We'll
Hold
call
on.
it
We're not
servers.
getting into the semantics of it. Yeah.
I'm not going to get into that right now. Okay. So this is the stuff that the company has and the stuff the company wants to protect, right?
Right.
And so then let's talk about like this side of the world, right? The internet. So how does this stuff present itself to the internet? So that's going to be through ports. So do you know what a port is, PJ? Can you describe what a port is?
I have a basic idea of a port. Yeah. Like port 80, for instance, is always HTTP protocol. Did I say that right? Yeah. So it's like a special way of entry into the internet itself. Like this is how you get in. You use this port to exchange information in and out.
And so in TCP or UDP, which are the protocols that are used on the internet, right? There are ports, and there's 65,000 some odd of them. I should know that number off the top of my head, but I don't. And typically they represent, you know, certain kinds of services that run on those given ports and are listening for data on those ports. So I've written 443 and 80 here because you mentioned 80 is HTTP, 443 is HTTPS, right? Encrypted HTTP traffic. But there's lots of other ports. Like for instance, Postgres typically runs, it can run on any port, but typically runs on 5432, right? Down the line there. Now, in theory, this is happening here and maybe not exposed to the internet, but sometimes bad things happen and configuration's wrong. And so we're going to put that port out here too, right? Yeah. All right. And so that's the thing. And then how do we get to those ports as users? So let's talk about that. So those ports are ports that are on, when we say a port, we mean it's on an IP address, right? So there's going to be an IP address here that has the listening portion of that port. So let's say that's 123.45.67.89, right? So
that's my IP address actually.
Oh, wow. Shoot. Well, exposed.
Wild. All right. Well, good luck, hackers.
It's all over. Okay, so that right, the way that at a low level we're going to connect to this app or this service or this website is going to be that IP address : that port, right? So we see the IP address, we see : the port here, right? And then how are we going to find that IP address? Well, that IP address is going to come from domain or subdomain names, right? So this IP address might point to, you know, site.companya.com, right? Which is our company site, or the address of our app, right? Maybe actually, so this is going to the app. It's called app.companya.com, right? Cool. And then that is going to be, you know, part of our larger company A domain. So here we'll have, companya.com, and that can have lots and lots of, you know, infinite number of subdomains, app.company.com, login.company.com, all these things, right? That is, you know, typically how we're connecting the internet. One thing that I haven't put in here is what's called a CDN. Do you know what a CDN is? I don't know if you do. This is like, you know,
I don't know that I've quite gotten
So CDN is content delivery network, right? And so the idea of a CDN is, you know, these servers and stuff are living in one place or region, right? Like it's in US East 1, right? And a CDN is has edge points, right? They call it edge, right? You hear that term a lot too. That means it's going to have connection points throughout the internet, you know, that's going to be over in Asia and in Europe and in Africa, right? And it's going to bring some of your content closer, you know, to those regions to be closer to physically closer, right? Because the speed of light is an unfortunate,
it's a real barrier,
drag on the internet. And so you want to have those bits as, you know, as close to people as possible. But there's also a lot of other things CDNs do. So I drew this in orange here for no particular reason, but there's a very famous orange one, right? That does a lot of like DDoS prevention, DDoS being distributed denial of service, right? They do all kinds of, there's web application firewalls. I'm writing CDN here, but let's say it's actually a lot of things. Right? And I may or may not have it. So I'll put the CDN down here and I won't put it up here just for giggles. So this is what the attack surface of a company looks like. PJ, do you have questions here while I take a pause that like don't make sense?
I will say, like when we talk about an attack surface, I think it's a thing that kind of gets bandied about a lot without a very clear definition. But this really just made it click in my mind. I always knew attack surface is the places where we could be vulnerable, but to have it put in this kind of method of being like, no, these are the places where you're vulnerable. This is a attack surface. This just made it really crystal clear for me. I really like that. This is pretty cool so far. I am excited. And you haven't even mentioned Project Discovery yet. This is just the background.
Yeah, I haven't mentioned a single PD tool yet, but PD is really about helping you run an effective offensive security program, either as a bug bounty hunter or as a penetration tester or as somebody employed by company A to protect it.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to bring in all 20 of our open source tools, right?
Fantastic.
So via the pre-cooked chicken in the oven, I've got all of the tools copied and pasted onto my clipboard here.
Fantastic.
All right, so here's all of our tooling. So basically, we can group, and now for those who are a little bit more familiar with everything we just talked about, I should have prefaced this whole thing with I'm oversimplifying a lot here.
It's very oversimplified. Listen, this is the simplest giant overview for a rookie.
Yep. Okay. So if I'm going to attack this or want to protect this, what do I want to know? So I need to know about all of these points on my attack surface, right? Each of these are points. So the first is, what ports are open to the internet, right? Mm-hmm. And what technology are they running? So again, this is probably running an HTTP server of some kind. There's dozens of different HTTPS servers, right? And technologies that are used to run web servers. So what web service is running, what things are running on what port, and what technology they're using is important. So Naboo is a port scanning tool that's going to take in a set of hosts and scan for open ports. And then HTTPX is kind of a little bit more specialized tool that's going to look at open web ports and say what technologies are running on there, right? And so these two things are really going to be used to take a look at what's running and what ports are open, right? And then what's on those ports. So that's really where Naboo and HTTPX come in.
Awesome.
So that's what's externally facing the world, right? On the flip side of that, if I work at company A, I know a lot about the inside of this network and how these things relate, right? There's lots of back and forth here, right? And so I might, and this is probably in a cloud provider, right? Let's say it's in AWS or in GCP.
Very likely, yeah.
Yep. So I might want to say, enumerate all of these things that exist inside my cloud environment, and then, scan those, check for vulnerabilities in those, right? And so that's where Cloudlist comes in. So Cloudlist is over here. We're going to put it squarely inside the company, because what it does is it uses the APIs for the various cloud vendors to say, what servers exist, what endpoints exist that could be attacked, what kind of different things are there that we might want to look at from the cloud. So it actually, Naboo and HTTPX are saying from the outside looking in what exists and what ports are open. Cloudlist kind of flips that on its head and says, okay, what do I know is running in my cloud so that I can take a look at that. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah, this is great.
Okay.
This is great.
Okay. So then, right, the next thing, I missed TLSX, which also, let's put that over here with Naboo and HTTPX, because it also looks for, what kind of specifically what TLS. So TLS is the transport layer security. It's what the S in HTTPS is. And so it's looking for what versions of TLS are you running, because there's some that are more and less secure than others. And it does a lot of other stuff with certificates and all that HTTPS kind of stuff. So we'll put TLS over there too. All right. And then we have this IP address. Okay. So let's talk about IP addresses for a second. So IP addresses can have, companies can own whole sets of IP addresses, right? And, subnets and there's a lot of things I want to do once I know about IP addresses, or to look for IP addresses that a company might own, right? And so part of that is CIDR. So CIDR is a way of referring to how we determine the size and scope of a set of IP addresses. And then also ASN map is the autonomous systems on the internet. So autonomous systems is basically where everybody agrees on what IP addresses belong to who, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Again, I'm oversimplifying a lot of this, but the idea of these two tools are, given a given target, what kind of things can I learn based on their IP address scope and range? Right?
Yeah.
But before we get to that, we may not know about that. We want to find out, what DNS records are actually live for a given thing. And so DNSX is where we can say, given a set of maybe, subdomains and DNS records that we'll discover first, what of those are actually live? Like if I make a DNS call, is that, is the DNS server going to tell me that this belongs to this IP address, right? This name belongs to this IP address. And so that's where DNSX comes in. And then where a lot of the activity is going to happen is in finding subdomains that belong to the target or to, myself if I'm the company, right? And so that's where SubFinder is hugely beneficial. So SubFinder is going to passively look at a number of internet data sources for DNS and say, given company.a.com, what subdomains exist, right? app.companyname.com, login.companyname.com, right? site.companyname.com. So it's going to do that, but it's going to do it in a passive way, right? So it's using the API for a lot of different, I think it's 10 or 15 different APIs that it brings together and then, gives you an output of all the possible subdomains that exist. The inverse of that is AlterX. So AlterX, instead of starting from a passive place, is going to take in active sets of maybe common names for subdomains and then go see, does the subdomain exist, right? So I keep coming up with common names like app. AlterX can take in a word list and then find out, do those subdomains exist for a given domain?
Okay.
And then two other ones that apply here are Chaos and Shuffle DNS. There it is. Okay.
There it is.
So Chaos is actually our own internet-wide DNS service where we're going and gathering data about what DNS exists. That's why it's called Chaos Client, because actually the open source thing that uses Connect, but let's just call it Chaos. So one of those 10 or 15 different sources that I said SubFinder can use is Chaos, which is our own PD-owned data source for subdomains that we're kind of constantly doing lookups and that kind of thing. And again, there's other places that do that on the internet, and that's where SubFinder brings them all together, but Chaos is ours. So SubFinder is like Chaos plus other folks. And then Shuffle DNS, again, is more about it uses this it's a wrapper on this thing called mass DNS, which again is more about kind of iterating through possible DNS entries and looking up, given a set of possible entries and then a set of unique DNS resolvers, does a DNS record exist? So it gets a little more complicated there, but suffice it to say, all four of those tools are part of the recon of what subdomains exist for a given company.
And that's tied into what you said. Yeah, it's what you said earlier about sometimes you create something. And I mean, think of assets of a gigantic company like Starbucks. I get stuff all the time. They're like, our summer, game is live and you can play a game with them, but they only do it every once in a while. So they're creating these new assets all the time. And many companies are constantly creating new assets. So it's really easy for one of those to just sort of slip by and be forgotten about. So these are great ways for a company to discover what is out there. That's cool.
All right. And so those are kind of the purpose-built tools for each piece of this chain. And then there's two other discovery tools I want to talk about, and that's Uncover and Katana. Should be easier to find stuff now, right? Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So Katana is what's called a web crawler. So it'll take in a website and kind of request that whole website and crawl through it. Look for every link that exists in a given website and iterate through all of them and then find links of links. And you set the depth of how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go. Yeah. And that's really interesting because that can uncover stuff that maybe isn't listed here, but that, this app might call out to some API and that API. So maybe that when you're using that website or that app, it calls out to API dot that, is not listed somewhere, or maybe calls out to some big long thing that wouldn't necessarily flag you as oh, that looks important until you see, oh, wait, the app is calling this domain all the time, right? Yeah. So that's something Katana can do. And then Uncover is even more kind of looking at the whole world of, what are the things that exist. So it's using internet-wide search engines like Shodan is the most popular one to say, what kind of stuff exists out here on the internet, right? Let's just put it in a good generic internet cloud, right?
Yeah.
And so it's, again, those are internet-wide search engines like Shodan that index and search for, assets all over the internet. And so you can search those, but Uncover brings together, I think 10, or I'm not sure how many.
It's several. And you need the, I remember this, you need the API keys for those in order to be able, so if you have a Shodan API, you plug that into Uncover, now you're using Uncover. If you have all those API keys, you can do all of those searches in one single place instead of having to go to those 10 different places.
Exactly. That's the idea of exact idea of Uncover. So we're just going to point it right at the internet. Okay.
Just right at the internet.
It's the internet. Uncovers the internet. Yeah. And then lastly, and kind of this specialized category is CDN check. So it can be really critical to understand if the traffic for a given website is going through a CDN or not, because again, those CDNs are oftentimes going to have, web application firewalls or other things that could slow traffic from an attacker, or could even end up blocking traffic if you're too chatty, right? And so understanding if there's a CDN in between you and your target is really critical. So CDN check does some sleuthing on, what are the known IP address ranges for CDNs, and so it's very passive. Again, it's passive. It's not, you don't have to actually be hitting it, but you can passively find out, like, does this IP address that I got back, like, is that a CDN or not? So that gives you a lot of great information. All right, any questions there? Sorry, I don't want to go too fast.
No, this is great. So a lot of this is in the not the discovery phase. What is it called? Reconnaissance phase.
Reconnaissance. Yep. So
this is just gathering information.
Yep. Exactly. 100%. So everything we just talked about is, really in that reconnaissance phase of like, what is out there, what is facing the internet for this company, and what can I, maybe try and go attack. So then if I'm going to go and try and go attack, there's a couple of things I want to do. So interestingly enough, we haven't talked about nuclei yet. Of all
I figured
things.
that's coming.
But right. So let's say this is like my attacker's system. Yeah,
this is my officially licensed. I'm allowed to bug bounty hunt. I've been given permission to scan this stuff. Attacker.
So once I've got all this kind of reconnaissance data, what I want to do is take kind of this whole world from the beginning to end, and I want to be able to then find out what vulnerabilities may or may not exist against it, right? And so that's where our good friend Nuclei comes in, right? And so Nuclei is going to be using a set of Nuclei templates, right? And here we can see, the Nuclei templates project is another one of our tools, because that is this huge database of YAML files that define what does a vulnerability look like? What does something being vulnerable to a given CVE or a given kind of attack look like? What is the signature that we can say, if we see it come back from one of these systems, we know that, that's going to mean that it's vulnerable, right? And so I'm going to be, doing this kind of thing with Nuclei to say, okay, how can I attack all this attack surface that I've uncovered?
Yeah.
Right? And then there's a few more tools here, and we're going to talk about those. So let's talk about Interact SH and Simple HTTP Server and Proxifier, kind of ancillary to this. So let's talk about those for a second. So Interact SH is all about what's called out-of-band interactions. And so what's an out-of-band interaction, Brendan? Great question, PJ. So an out-of-band interaction is when, like, some applications might allow, based on what they're doing, you to fetch content from an external location and then load it in as a resource to the app. And that kind of sounds scary, but also that's kind of how a lot of apps just have to work, right? Like, I'm going to fetch an API and then I'm coming back. But what if that place where I'm fetching the API is vulnerable for me to say, instead of going to API, go to brendansapi.com.
Oh,
right?
No, don't go to Brendan's API.
No, but it might, right? And so in that case, you have what's called an out-of-band interaction, where when I am, sending a request up here, I actually then get data back, and I'm able to get a lot more information about that. And I may be able to, in that interaction, get the thing that I'm interacting with to connect to something else inside the network that it wasn't really supposed to originally, right? And maybe even return me data back. So this is a way that I can traverse, right? And so this is, for folks that know Burp Suite, this is the Burp Suite collaborator. It's what that Burp Suite collaborator does, which is like when you're interacting with a website, if you're able to get it to send data back to you in a way that it was unexpected, you get flagged. Interact SH is the server component, and then the client component that allow you to both run a server that can accept that kind of data and then see if that interaction happens.
So I want to make sure I understand that real quick, because I think I've done something similar in the few hacking trainings that I've done. So Interact SH server sets up a server to listen and is a place that you can reroute things to. Is that right?
Exactly.
Cool.
And then Proxify and Simple HTTP Server, they're not necessarily used directly, but they're useful tools. So Proxify lets you, if you're behind a firewall, set up a proxy, into your firewall really easily for a domain. And then Simple HTTP Server is what it says. It's for Go. It just lets you run a simple HTTP server. So if you have another reason to try and stand up a system to get interaction with, that's where Proxify and Simple HTTP Server come in.
This is great. I feel like there's a lot of tools that have really been explained so far, and yet I still see some more over there on that
There's
list.
still more. Well, we haven't actually talked about like our friend, like the hacker dude. So
what's he doing?
Oh, here he is. Right
there. He is.
The point of all of this is to automate a lot of our friend the hacker's life, right? And like, can we different color? Ooh. Okay. So the idea is that as a hacker, they've set up all of this stuff in an automated way, right? A pipeline that goes through all this reconnaissance. And then once we've got all this stuff from reconnaissance that we want to interact with, it's going to run all of our templates and maybe our specialized templates or the community templates against, right? Mm-hmm. And so then I, as again, the hacker, don't want to have to sit there and monitor all that. What's the point of automating all of it? So that's
you have to watch every line on the right. Terminal run up.
No, I don't want to do that. So that's where Notify comes in. So the output of any of these tools, Nuclei, for instance, can get piped into Notify, and then Notify interacts with APIs like Slack and Discord and Telegram to be able to say, given a set of conditions, if I find some critical vulnerability, send me a notification so that I can hop off my hacker yacht and, because they've got the monocle and take a look, right?
I'm avoiding orcas on my hacker yacht.
All right. And then there's just two more tools left. So there's AIX. So AIX is, I'd put it kind of in this other category of things that can help you uncover more of the attack surface. What it is it's a wrapper on the OpenAI API so that you can actually put prompts in things like, what kind of subdomains might you think exist? Or given this output from Katana, what would you think the most likely attack vectors are, right? And so it's just a way to kind of, again, feed a lot of this information in through, large language model like OpenAI's GPT-4, GPT-3.5, and then get back, maybe some responses that then can, feed back into the system. So that's like maybe like a cyclical, into the system, and then out of the system kind of thing. Again, I think that's one of the newer tools, and so we're definitely interested in like what folks are doing with it, and so that's really cool.
Yeah, AIX isn't doing any attacking or reconnaissance itself. It's access to a large language model that you can pass information into and possibly get some answers back.
Exactly.
Cool.
And then the last one is PDTM. So PDTM stands for Project Discovery Tool Manager. And since we've had this massive set of tools that we've come up with, it's a lot to deal with. So PDTM allows us to automate all of the updating and installation of all of these tools. So it kind of connects to all of them and lets you say, manage their installation, manage their updating for all of these various tools. In fact, the list that I got for these tools to make sure I was covering everything came out of PDTM's.
That's right.
Here's the list of tools that are available. So every tool we talked about, you can of course check out the GitHub page and join our Discord to learn more. But if you start at PDTM, you can easily then install all of this.
Yeah, because imagine doing the installation for each one by one, as opposed to just PDTM, install all, and all 20 of these tools are now on your machine.
Exactly. All right, PJ. Well, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Is there any other questions that you have?
This has explained so much for me. And first off, I want to remind anyone who's watching this video, this is not like a bit where I pretended to not know these things. Like Brendan was like, oh yeah, let's talk about these things because we want to do more with our tools on the streams that I do. And we were just going to have a meeting. And he said, we're recording it. I have this great idea. He has this diagram. And I legit have now learned more about our tools, and I feel better prepared to actually do some stuff with it in the future. So this has been fantastic for me. I hope this becomes valuable for other people because that's what we're aiming for. But Brendan, first off, thank you for turning this into content and making my job just a little bit easier. But also for that explanation, because I haven't seen a kind of concise explanation like this anywhere, and I've been looking, and this is great.
Yeah, be the change you want to seek in the world. That you seek in the world, right?
Be the docs you want to see in the world.
Exactly. Yeah, and I would just, again, encourage anyone who has questions about any of this to join our Discord server. It's nux.gg/discord. So that's nux.gg/discord. And also, as I said, I oversimplified a lot in this video. So if you're watching this and you know a lot more about bug bounty hunting than PG and I do, I would love you to comment below all of the things I got wrong. I would just love the comments to be just tearing into everything that I oversimplified.
It's just real angry about it.
Just
like real,
just like, well, actually, in fact, if you start your comment with actually, and then a comment, I will send you a Project Discovery sticker. So if you comment below something I got wrong, has to start with actually, so that it has a good tone to it. I'll send you a sticker.
That's right. What a fantastic, what has this been? 30 minutes?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's what this video is going to be called. The 30-minute Project Discovery Tool Rundown.
Yes. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And like he said, join the Discord. Check us out on Twitter, nux.gg/Twitter. That's nux.gg/Twitter. And you can find Brendan and I both on the Discord. We're always engaging with the Twitter as well. And we're excited to see y'all in real life at some upcoming events. So pay close attention to the Discord for more information on that. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.